Hey, what's up guys? Lieutenant Mia back with another video, and this time we're going to be looking at aircrew flight equipment. So the standard issue equipment that you'll be flying off, at least for the beginner phase of combat systems officer training, which is for the T-6 aircraft. So I've got all the equipment that you'll fly with laid out here. We'll just start looking at each one briefly, and then I'll look at them in depth and kind of talk about the different components that make it up. So starting from up here, we've got the flight harness. Down here is the flight suit, the standard issue flight suit, which is what I'm wearing right now. Then you've got your flight gloves, the G suit, and last you've got your helmet, which is the HGU 55 series. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a closer in-depth look at each of these items. So looking at our first piece of equipment, it's the Nomex flight suit. Essentially, this is just a one-piece coverall uniform, which is Nomex, meaning it's fire retardant, and it acts as the first layer of defense against any flame-related injuries or hazards from fire. This is standard issue for all aircrew in the Air Force. They're currently experimenting with a new uniform, the optical camouflage pattern flight suit, but it's still in testing, and this remains the predominant fireproof material that the Air Force is authorizing everyone to fly with. It's characterized by a lot of pockets. You'll notice that it's got pockets on the chest, patches to designate your unit. It's interesting, advantage of having these Velcroed on versus sewed on is if you're ever down in enemy territory, you can take the patches off and it helps you stay a little bit more anonymous. It's also characterized by having these thigh pockets down here, which are on top. Which are on top versus the side, because if you're sitting down you won't have access to pockets that are on your side, so they stitched them up top, which is very helpful. So it's also got a pocket for a belt cutter / knife, and some pockets to store your cover, and some zippers for the boots. So pretty basic uniform here. It's the first layer, like I said. Now all aircrew wear this pretty much, so regardless of whether you're in a fighter, something with an ejector seat for example, or if you're in a heavy aircraft like a C-130 or a AWACS or anything like that, pretty much all aircrew fly with this. So that's the first line, and let's move on to the next item. So here we've got our Nomex flight gloves. This is basically the same principle and concept as the flight suit, except it's applied to your hands. And they do expect you to wear this a certain way, which I'll demonstrate next. What you want to do first is take off any watches. And then basically, if you have your sleeves cuffed up like I do, you want to uncuff your sleeve, like so. Detach the Velcro, pinch it in as close as you can to your wrist so it's nice and tight to your wrist. Then don the glove. And what they expect you to have is the glove over the Velcroed portion, like so. This is just to protect your skin from any exposure, and it basically minimizes the amount of skin that can make contact with the flames. Then if you were going to wear a watch, they make you wear your watch over the glove, which I'll demonstrate shortly. Very similar to kind of how the astronauts wear theirs, or how a U-2 pilot wears it over their pressure suit, but that's basically how they want your watch. And that's the proper way to wear the glove. Okay, glove was pretty simple. Let's move on to the next item. So here we have the flight harness. Now before I talk about this, I have to make a quick disclaimer. This is not the issued flight harness. The harness that they issue you here for training is not allowed to leave the aircrew flight equipment facility. This harness is just my personal one that was from military surplus. It's actually not complete. It's missing the latches that it needs to properly secure itself, as well as a couple of the clips that go on the thighs. But just for the sake of concept, let's just talk about what this is. The harness essentially goes over your chest and straps under your thighs, and it's used to secure yourself in an ejection aircraft to the seat and to the parachute itself. And you'll basically be strapping the harness into the ejection seat. Now in aircraft that don't have ejection seats, such as heavy aircraft, the harness will attach itself to a parachute for bailing out. Basically, it's kind of like a vest, and if you are expecting to fly over areas of water, the harness will also have a life preserver unit, which is essentially a buoyancy device that's around the neck here. Now this one, as you can see, doesn't have it, but when you fly over Naval Air Station Pensacola for Combat Systems Officer training, they will issue you a Water Survival Life Preserver Unit, or LPU. Again, this harness is not complete. It's missing a latch that goes here and a couple of them towards the lower part here, but conceptually, that's what a harness is, and that's the purpose it serves. So next up, let's take a look at the G-suit. Alright, next up we've got the G-suit here. So the G-suit is basically another piece of equipment. What's unique about this piece of equipment, though, in particular, is that it's used in high-performance aircraft, and the purpose it serves is to mitigate blood pooling away from the extremities. It does that by basically constricting your abdomen and your legs. It's got these air bladders here, which will fill up with air whenever the aircraft is in a turn. And it basically does that by having this hose connect to the aircraft's air supply systems. And whenever the aircraft is in a turn, these bladders will inflate and basically constrict your lower extremities. That in turn prevents blood pooling away from your upper body, and it kind of keeps the blood in the upper body to help you combat some of the Gs. Generally speaking, they say it's effective at combating about 1 to 1.5 to maybe 2 Gs depending on your body type. So it does help with not blacking out. It's a bit of a tight fit, and it's not the most comfortable thing in the world, but it does help you mitigate a lot of the threats that are associated with pulling Gs. So I'll demonstrate how to put this on properly after we go through the rest of the equipment, but that's basically the G-suit in a nutshell. It kind of does mirror the lower half of the flight suit in that it has a couple of pockets, and it's got a belt cutter in this shroud here. So that's the G-suit. Next up, we're going to be taking a look at the flight helmet. So here's the helmet. It's the HGU 55 series. It's standard issue for all aviator students at Combat Systems Officer Training at NAS Pensacola. And let's just take a look through it. So this honestly is my favorite piece of equipment. I just think it looks really cool and it's fun to wear. So first things first, you'll notice we've got a dust cover here. This is essentially in place to protect the visor. So the visor swivels down, but it is protected by this fabric here. And once you peel that off, you'll see what it looks like. On the other side, it's a fine felt material, so it serves a dual purpose to, one, protect the visor. You can also use it to wipe off any dust or smudges that are on the visor. So that's what that's used for. The visor is on a swivel, so you can swivel it up and down to protect some protection from the sun. Provide some protection from the sun. Next up, we've got the mask. Now the mask is held in place by these two clips here. They're called bayonets. And essentially you disengage the bayonets by pulling down on this metal tab, and that'll delodge the bayonet from these clips here, which are called the bayonet receivers. So that's the bayonet receiver, and they essentially clip in. They say you should hear 1, 2, 3 clicks, and that is the adequate number of clicks you should hear to provide the just right amount of balance when deciding how tight the mask should be. If you're someone who prefers the mask tighter, you can push the clip in further, or if you're someone who prefers it looser, you can loosen the bayonets as you see fit. It also does disengage completely, allowing you to remove the mask. Be sure to test that the mask is working properly before each sortie. They have a seal test station, which basically checks to make sure that you have an adequate seal so you can receive the oxygen that you need in flight. The mask also does provide dual purpose, which is oxygen as well as communication. So there is a microphone inside the mask, and that's what you'll use for your primary mode of communication, because it's very loud in there. So there you go, that takes care of the mask. You'll notice this little bulge in the front. That's not there for aesthetics. It does serve a purpose, which is to allow you to pop your ears. So when you have this mask on, sometimes it's hard to clear your eardrums because of the pressure created. Basically, you push this to relieve some of that pressure so you can clear your ears, and that's called a Valsalva maneuver. If you don't know what that is, you'll learn about it in academics. Here's the hose that connects to the oxygen system. It's called the OBOGS, onboard oxygen generating system of the aircraft. Basically, that filters out air from the outside and purifies it for you to breathe inside. And last, underneath, you've got the chin strap here, and that's basically just a strap that goes across and connects to the other side to secure it onto your head. And that is the HGU 55. Now with that pretty much covers all of the equipment. And one last thing I wanted to show was how to properly wear the G-suit and harness with your flight suit. So let's go ahead and do that.